Hey everybody, we're going to talk about how to name ionic compounds as well as to how to write their formulas. Before we begin, you should know that ionic compounds happen between metals and nonmetals. So if we look here on this periodic table, it happens between the red, which are metals, and the nonmetals, which are blue. Now let's talk about how to write the formula of an ionic compound. So here is one example that I wrote. Let's say we are mixing magnesium and chloride. Your first step should be to write the symbol along with the charge of the ion. So let's go ahead and do that. Magnesium, it is found over here, so that is going to be Mg for its symbol, and its charge is going to be +2. So I'm going to go ahead and write that. And over here we have chlorine, so its charge is going to be -1. Now, before we move on, you need to make sure that when writing your formula, the cation, so the positive ion, goes first. In this case, magnesium right here, this is the cation, and it is first right now, so we did that correctly. Always make sure that the cation goes first. Now your second step is to make sure that when your ions are added together, the entire compound equals to 0 when it comes to its charges. So let me show you what that means. Now when we look at these charges and we add them, we know that magnesium is a +2 and chlorine is a -1. So if we were to add those two together, we would do 2 minus 1, which gives us a +1. Now we said that this entire compound needs to be equal to 0 when you add it together. So if it's +1, you need to keep adding a negative. And so we know that anions, in this case chlorine, are negative. So let's go ahead and add another chlorine. Now that we added a chlorine ion, we have a +2. So I'm going to do +2 -1 -1 because we have two chlorines now. So 2 minus 1 minus 1 is going to give us a charge of 0. Now what you do to write out the formula is you write your cation first and how many you used. So in this case we only use one magnesium ion. So my subscript, which tells us how many magnesium ions I use, goes down here. The one in chemistry, we don't write it down. So let's go to chlorine. Over here we see that we use 2 chlorine. So my subscript is going to be 2. Again, the subscript tells you how many ions you used. So your formula for this would be MgCl2, or magnesium chloride. Let's do one more example. First step, you need to write your symbol and the charge of the ion. So beryllium is right here, so again it's going to be +2. And sulfur is right here, so it's going to be -2. My second step is to make sure that when these ions are added together, the entire compound, so when they come together, the charges should equal to 0. So let's see if they do. We know that beryllium is a +2 and sulfur is a -2, so 2 minus 2 equals 0. We know that the compound is going to equal to 0. Now when we write out the formula, we put in the cation first, so we have beryllium. We only use one beryllium in this case, right here, and we only use one sulfur. So the subscript is technically 1, but we don't write that in chemistry, so I'm just going to leave it as BeS, or beryllium sulfide. Now let me go ahead and show you a shortcut for writing these formulas. Although there is a shortcut, you need to be very careful with one mistake that can happen, and I will show you. So in the shortcut, just like you did previously, you're going to go ahead and write the symbol, and you're going to go ahead and write the charge. Now what you do is circle the charge, so a 2, and that's going to become the subscript of your anion. And you circle the charge of your anion, and that's going to become the subscript of your cation. When you write it out, it's going to be magnesium. The subscript is going to be 1 because the charge of chlorine is just 1, so I don't write it out. Now when you write out chlorine, you know that the subscript is 2 because that came from magnesium. So there we have it, magnesium chloride. Right here, this is where mistakes can happen when you use the shortcut, so I will show you. Again, circle your charge. This charge of the cation is going to become the subscript of the anion. Same with this charge, it's going to become the subscript of the cation. I'm going to write it out, so beryllium the charge of sulfur was 2, so its subscript of beryllium is going to be 2. Now sulfur subscript is going to be 2. The previous problem, we said that when you combine beryllium and sulfur, you actually end up with beryllium sulfide, and there are no subscripts, so we said it looks like this. When we did the shortcut, we have a subscript of 2 on 2, and so here is where the mistake can happen. Anytime that you do the shortcut, you need to make sure that your subscripts, in this case 2 and 2, are in its simplest form. So you have to ask yourself, can these two numbers be divided by a number to get a simpler number? So in this case, 2 can be divided by 2. So if you divide 2 divided by 2, you're going to end up with 1. So you end up with BES. The final thing that we're going to cover in this video is how to name these ionic compounds. First thing that you do is you look at your first element, in this case it's magnesium, and you go ahead and write out the entire name of the element. So in this case, I'm going to write magnesium. Now you look at your second element, in this case it's chlorine, and you're going to change its suffix to "ide", so IDE. So instead of chlorine, it's going to be chloride. Now the full name of this compound is magnesium chloride. Let's do one last example. First element is beryllium, so I'm going to go ahead and write out the entire full name of it, which is just beryllium. The second element is sulfur. I need to change the suffix to "ide", so it becomes beryllium sulfide. So there we have it. Let me know if you have any questions. Bye.